Welcome back to the Lab Podcast. I am Tristan Ryans alongside the one and only, not wearing khaki today, but khaki Kevin Walker. This is your Destination Formula One podcast. We are following the British Grand Prix where we had a controversial penalty we're definitely going to be discussing at length. 239 races in the making. Nico Hulkenberg getting his first podium. Mercedes with an absolutely disastrous weekend. We had some breaking news today, though, and we're going to be starting with that. But before we jump into it, make sure to subscribe. Helps support the channel, moves us up the algorithm, puts us in front of Formula One fans just like yourself. And Kevin's going to get that number. What are we at right now?
We've got 71 loyalty LPs at the moment. So y'all are absolutely crushing it right now. Just keep doing y'all's thing. The watch time's going up. Y'all, the amount of y'all that are staying on the videos that we're posting, y'all are doing an incredible job. And we'll be getting into it later, but y'all have been blowing up the comment section between TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Don't worry, we got a segment for y'all today.
And where else do you get these real-time analytics? Only here on the Formula One podcast, your Formula One podcast, the Lapped podcast. But let's jump into this thing. The big breaking news today, Christian Horner out as the Red Bull team boss and CEO. I was thinking more, what is that, Backstreet Boys?
Yeah,
singing,
I know.
Bye.
I'm just not trying to get a copyright, but
I mean, you think you sound as good as JT? Anyway, look, huge breaking news this morning. If you're watching this podcast, I'm sure you already know about it. But man, this mid-season, I think that's the most surprising element of this.
shock.
Yeah, waking up post Silverstone, middle of the season. We haven't even reached the summer break yet. We just crossed the halfway point, and Red Bull have made some massive decisions. So
biggest news of 2025?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say right now, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, you look, if there's something bigger that I'm not thinking of at the moment, let us know in the comments. But my gut reaction says, yes, this is probably the biggest move so far this season.
And I would say the second biggest move would also be in Red Bull's.
What do you mean? Like, you think it's going to coming?
No, I'm saying that if you, at this moment, the only other big move that I can think of.
The only thing that would be bigger than this is Max Verstappen moving.
Yeah.
100%.
That's the only thing that could top this at this current moment. But I think this is the biggest news of 2025 so far. And
I think the biggest question first is why did this happen? And maybe you're asking that at home. Maybe you're asking that wherever you're watching us. But
I think there's layers to it.
There are definitely layers to this. I think firstly and foremost, it's got to be due to performance. At the end of the day, Formula One is a performance-based business. Christian Horner is one of the most successful team principals in the history of the sport. Second highest win total in the sport, only behind Ron Dennis of McLaren, if I'm not mistaken. And 124 race wins in his time leading the Red Bull Racing team. 8 World Driver Championships between Max Verstappen's dominance and the Sebastian Vettel era. 6 Constructors Championships as well. The dude's got an incredible resume. I don't think this is going to be his last stop, but what went wrong is the big question. Why was this move incoming this year? Because they've been fighting with one hand tied behind their back. And it really goes back to last year as well. That first stretch of the year where, business as usual, Max Verstappen's kicking everybody's ass. It all fell away.
Yeah.
And they only won, I think, 2 races the rest of last year. So far, only 2 wins this year, sitting in a very, very, very sizable distance away in P4 as well in this constructors fight.
And I think that that's part of, you talk about Red Bull fighting with a hand behind their back. I think that's part of that layer is that Christian Horner and Red Bull have an issue with a second driver. It's been something that we've talked about since, Daniel Ricciardo was there. It's that they haven't been able to find somebody suitable enough to drive that second seat alongside Max. And at this point, we've gone through Liam Lawson, we've gone through Yuki Tsunoda, we've gone through Checo Perez, we've gone through Daniel Ricciardo, we've gone through, can you think of Alex Albon?
Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly.
And
look, Checo held his own for a while. I'll give him credit.
Right.
He kicked ass for a couple of years there when they were winning championships in this regulation. But things obviously went sour along the development of this car too.
Yeah, and we're not just going to, throw that all on Checo. Like, we've seen now that this car is, I mean, Max says it pretty much every weekend how difficult it is to drive, puts it on pole. How
Effectively,
difficult it is to drive wins a
it's an
race.
undrivable, monster of a car. And
He
yeah,
gets
and Max gets absolutely everything out of this machine every single weekend.
out of it. If it's giving him 70, he takes 115 out.
Yeah.
But that's just Max Verstappen being Max Verstappen. Christian Horner has had a bad time evaluating driver number 2 and has had a bad time of making that move, dating back to all the way back to, like when I said, the Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo days. This is a situation that's been brewing. And I think that's just one of the many layers. And
the other part of this too, before like we start moving even further, is that personnel wise, they've lost so much talent. Rob Marshall, who's been dominating for McLaren going back to last season and into this final year, the regulation, basically built the McLaren, restarted that entire program. Imagine if he was still a member of the Red Bull Racing family, how much further ahead they could possibly be, even with the loss of Adrian Newey, one of the greatest, if not the greatest car designers in the history of the sport, leaving the team.
Yeah.
Amid all the controversial stuff happening off track between Christian Horner and the scandal when it came to relations with a fellow employee that were dismissed by Red Bull, but those things are still in the air.
That's definitely a layer.
Jonathan Wheatley leaving Red Bull Racing, the sporting director at the time, now the team principal for Stake, soon to be Audi, another major figure. The death of Dietrich Mateschitz, who was a huge proponent of this racing team, him passing away, turning over a lot of the control to the tie backing for this team as well. Just the layers and layers of people who have gone, who are no longer a part of this team. Obviously, you can't help somebody dying, but all those other members of the team, and then the internal feuds as well with Helmut Marko going on, where the only reason Max is stuck around is mostly because of his relationship with Helmut Marko. It has a lot less to do with Christian Horner as well.
And I think one of the layers that you're missing out here is Jos Verstappen, Max's dad, obviously has been, he's come out and said how he doesn't like Christian Horner and how he hasn't liked how Red Bull has been operating. And we're not saying that just because Jos says something that Max agrees with, that they completely see eye to eye, but that definitely has to be a talking point.
But they're obviously very close. That relationship
extremely
is
close.
Most important probably in Max's life outside of his, family.
Yeah. And so I think that that's probably the layer to it. And I think that the very final thing, and I think this is the straw that broke the camel's back, is if the conversations between Max Verstappen and Mercedes are real, then I think that was leverage from Max to, hey, I'll stay if you not necessarily give me what I want, but I need to see change. Like I need to see something different before we go into these 2026 regulations. I think that, again, I think that's the final straw that made Red Bull make that make that decision.
I can understand that.
And now, but my question is, why midseason?
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of alluded to it already. The conversations happening between Max and Mercedes, the looming threat of him leaving. And you did you're kind of opening my eyes to it. I hadn't even thought about the angle for Jos and them potentially moving on from Horner specifically because of those demands. That's a great point. And having that leverage of being able to say, look, Mercedes, they've got it figured out over there. I mean, this car can win races. We've seen that George Russell can win a race with this car. Yeah. Imagine what I could do in that car, right? They are going to have the best power unit, presumably, going into the next regulation. That's going to be a huge decider early. And organizationally, it looks like things are better over there. Grass is looking greener. What are you going to do to keep me on this side of the fence?
There's a whole bunch of question marks at Red Bull because you're about to go into this Ford powertrain. You're about to go into this 26 regulation. And though Christian Horner won't be there, that car is going to have Christian Horner written all over it. That car's been in development for so long. It's not like they're going to completely escape that era.
Yeah. So there's a lot of internal changes happening at Red Bull, even outside of just this particular situation. But I'm really curious to see exactly how much this alters that driver conversation, whether or not this is made directly to appease Max and Jos Verstappen or not, or maybe to appease just Helmut Marko. But it's not like Helmut Marko is stepping in to be the team principal here either.
Sure.
Lauren Mekies is graduating from VCARB to
Very
the
deserved.
CEO
Very deserved.
He's been team principal role.
He's been in, and we can go ahead and we can dive into that a little bit. Mekies has been in Formula One for quite some time now, been in the Red Bull system, obviously with VCARB. And
he was there when they were formerly Toro Rosso as well.
Now, I will say this. At the announcement, it was just announced that he was going to be the CEO. Red Bull put out a statement earlier at noon, around 4 hours ago or so, that he will be the team principal and CEO. Now, is this on an interim basis? Are they going to reevaluate this? We don't necessarily know that, but until further notice,
yeah, I mean, he's the guy. He's the man. The movement here of Christian Horner being gone, moving on to new leadership, both at VCarb as well as Red Bull, because they had to graduate somebody else into Lauren's old position. Sporting director Alan Permain is now taking that position over. This feels like a signal of kind of hitting the reset button, because there's so many things in flux. Because there's so many things in flux going into this next regulation, because of the disappointment when it came to the multiple layers of Red Bull this season, going back to last year, it feels like Red Bull are kind of in a position right now where they're kind of hitting a soft reset button, changing in leadership, change in direction. We understand that they're going to have a brand new powertrain partnership with Ford next year. What's that going to look like? We have no idea. We can't imagine it's going to be the best power unit on the grid. There's a lot of things changing at Red Bull. From a leadership perspective, top down organizationally, it looks like they were fed up with Horner. Again, you talked about it possibly being a leverage point for Max Verstappen to want to stay. But on the other side of that coin, if it's not a Max decision and it wasn't pressured necessarily by Max directly,
then that'll make him want to leave more.
Yes. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask. Do you think that this means that Max stays or goes? That seems to be the biggest question circulating this.
This is kind of where I feel not necessarily bad for Red Bull, but I feel like there's still, I think if you're a Red Bull fan and you think that this is going to be, hey, we're good now, we're going to be able to keep Max, I would hold that thought, because I still have a feeling that Max is going to make the best decision for Max. He is in the prime of his career right now. He can pretty much put any car on pole. I mean, we saw Nico Hulkenberg can do it, because we can only imagine what Max could do with a stake, right?
Anyway.
Well, podium. But either way, I say that to say that Max is in his prime right now. He already feels like he's wasted away last year probably, and this year he feels like he's driving a lawnmower trying to do the best that he can.
Well, he still had the championship last year, admittedly. They were able to salvage a really strong start to finish.
But he doesn't want to fight one-handed. Remember, I actually brought this up. We'll pat my back a little bit, but I brought this up probably about a month or so ago, that how long is Max going to put up with him just fighting solo? Like, drivers' championships are fantastic and everything like that, but Max is not leading the drivers' championship. Matter of fact, he's quite a bit ways off, and Red Bull's far off the constructors at this point. So if you're Max, then why do you want to stay at Red Bull? If you, one, don't have a promised future, you don't know what's going to happen, you're in the prime of your career. There's other options out there. We've talked about it before. Aston Martin is definitely an option, because they'll pay him the money that he needs. Yeah. They'll pay him, they have Adrian Newey. So that's going to be
have the Honda partnership too.
They'll have a Honda partnership, which Max has been.
He's been driving for most of his career at this point.
Exactly. So that's a move that would make a lot of sense. And it's a car that performance-wise, Aston Martin has surprised us a little bit here and there. So there's a lot of,
with Adrian Newey leading the way next year, it
changes everything.
We have no idea how much further up the field it's going to be.
It changes literally everything. So I say all that to say that this move does not make Max a certified going to stay at Red Bull no matter what situation. And matter of fact, if I'm Red Bull, I'm a little bit more scared, because he's still going to make the decision based on whatever is best available for him. And this does not mean that, because there's a lot of question marks.
I just
something that a prime athlete doesn't want to deal with is question marks.
Well, yeah, there's just too much instability here. In my personal opinion, I think that Red Bull are going to find out very quickly if Max Verstappen's in or if he's out.
Yeah,
I think the decision's going to come there's been a lot of conversations about what's going on behind the scenes between those conversations between Max and Mercedes potentially. My gut feeling is that he's on his way out. Whether it's Mercedes, whether it's Aston Martin, whether it's another team on the grid completely, the instability of Red Bull, this soft refresh, this restart, and
he ain't got time for it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be fighting in the midfield. He doesn't want to be fighting to maybe make a podium. He wants to be fighting for race wins. He wants to be fighting for championships. Yep. His goal is always going to be a World Drivers' Championship. Now Red Bull are so far away from delivering that for him. He's still hanging on to P3, but there's a good argument to be made that he's not going to finish in P3. He could be finishing P4, P5 down. The way that this championship is going, the way that Red Bull have developed this car, no matter what they're doing, it seems like they just can't quite put the machine under him. That seems correct at this point.
Yeah.
The frustration's real. I don't know that the interesting aspect of this is like a week ago, we talked about this. I didn't see Max moving, but because Horner is now no longer there, tension or otherwise, that level of leadership change, this level of instability, I feel like at this point, the possibility of him going
higher than it's ever been.
It's higher than it's ever been. And I think we'll know within the next week to 2 weeks. I think we'll probably find out before even the summer break if he's actually going to make a big move.
Here's what I would say, and then we'll get off this because we do have a loaded show for y'all today. We'll lay it out. But here's what I will say. I think that we're about halfway through the season right now, if not exactly halfway through the season. I would say we will know the decision in the future of Red Bull Racing a third of the way through.
So by the summer break, basically.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just my feeling on it.
Because he's not going to drag it on. He's going to.
And there's even been rumor mill happening behind the scenes that like.
I wouldn't be surprised if the rumor mill starts turning even faster now.
Well, like the rumor mill being, I think Gazzetta Italy reported something along the lines of Mercedes were given the all clear to basically try to buy out his contract to the tune of like 100 million euros, something of that nature. Now, it's hard to confirm anything in this sport. Have you been watching our podcast? You've been a fan of the sport for a long time. You don't really know anything until it happens. Like
we had no clue that Christian Horner was probably
you could look back and see the speculation on this move coming. Like, oh, is Christian Horner going to go to a Ferrari? That was a thing that was tossed around. But like, I don't really see that happening myself. Fred Vasseur, it would take a lot, in my opinion, for that to happen. But
I have a destination for Horner.
I do have a destination as well.
I think a Cadillac move would make sense.
Interesting. Cadillac was on my radar for that.
Because and here's what I will say: if somebody wants to, get, and of course, please get in the comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you hate this move, you love this move, if you're a Red Bull fan, how you feel about it, if you think Max stays or goes. But taking out of regard who is already in place to be the team principal at Cadillac, I think if you have Christian Horner there, it's like, hey,
that's a lot of amazing experience.
Sorry, but that's Christian Horner and you're not. So I think Cadillac makes sense for me personally. And I don't know.
They probably offer him a bag.
Well, I mean, for sure. And I don't know if that means that takes Checo out of the running. I don't know what that relationship looks like. But just the first team that came to my head was Cadillac.
I don't hate that. I think it makes a lot of sense. There have been a lot of Red Bull drivers in the conversation for that potential move.
A lot.
The last episode, we talked about Yuki Tsunoda being in that conversation.
We talked about Yuki and Checo being in that conversation.
Exactly. The ongoing thing has been Checo for sure. It seems like all things are pointing that way. Heck, even Valtteri Bottas might be going in that direction.
True.
But the other team that I see possibly making a load of sense is Alpine. Because they don't have a team principal officially. Flavio Briatore has stepped into that role.
It's more interim than anything.
Yeah, but he doesn't necessarily want to be in that position from everything that I've heard and that I've read. It seems that he's doing it now because he's running the ship, but he doesn't want to be running it at that position.
Man, that would need a massive turnaround. I mean,
there have been conversations reported that even a few weeks ago, Horner had met with Alpine's leadership and had some level of conversation. What was said, what was discussed, who knows? How much did Christian Horner know as far as his potential sacking? We've heard this going back to Imola that it could be in the cards, right? I'm just saying, Alpine have got some infrastructure. They have some infrastructure issues, but if you get some really solid leadership in there, Christian Horner could maybe start making some top-down decisions to start moving them in the right direction.
Another thing they talked about,
and it's also in the UK, so you wouldn't have to move very far.
Another thing that has been rumored is that Christian didn't want to give up multiple roles within his Red Bull rank. He could go to Alpine and take over pretty much everything and just try to restructure that thing from the ground up.
Now, how Pierre Gasly would feel about this?
Probably not fantastic.
Maybe not excited about it. But Pierre Gasly is absolutely the best driver they've got in their stable at the moment. They've got a lot more questions.
That's interesting.
They have a lot more questions about that second driver seat too. So he'd be running from one position that doesn't have a number 2 seat figured out to another position that doesn't have a number 2 seat figured out. But I see Alpine making a lot of sense as well.
Now, but
that infrastructure is kind of scary.
Here's the last thing, and then we'll get off of this because I do want to ask: is there any shot that Christian Horner is not on the grid this time next year?
In 2026?
Yes. Is Christian Horner without a job in 2026?
I think I would be surprised. It's just with that level of success in the sport, he's got 124 wins. The next closest behind him is Toto, who is 120. So, I mean, the margins there is a little bit smaller. But I would be surprised if Christian Horner isn't at least entertaining offers. I don't know that there's going to be a position opening up for him that's that much closer to Red Bull, at least in the standings. Like, I don't think Aston Martin are going to open up that position.
I don't think he's going to be in a contender.
No, he's not going to just jump from Red Bull to another contender.
Yeah, he'll have to.
He's also, look, reality is like there's some stink associated at the moment. You don't have that many people leave. You don't have those kind of scandals, and people are jumping at the bit to necessarily.
He also hasn't made a lot of friends in Formula One. Let's just call that as it is.
Well, yeah, so that's what I mean. I think that for Cadillac, it makes a lot of sense. For Alpine, who have been less than shy about bringing in questionable characters.
Talk about stink.
They've been less than, they're not daunted by that prospect. Those two teams make a load of sense. I could see it. I think I would be surprised if he doesn't at least have offers from either of those teams within the next couple months. It's going to take some time. He's going to hang out at home, chill with Jerry and the kids, go hang out, go to a Spice Girls reunion, and then reevaluate, come back. Maybe he'll do a podcast like Gunter.
That'd be interesting.
He was spicy on Drive to Survive. We got some good moments from Christian Horner. Change the damn car. We could see it.
Okay,
all right. See it.
Well, that's what we got for Christian Horner news, guys.
Look, where do you guys think Christian Horner is going to land if he's going to be on the grid next year? Fantastic question, Kevin. You guys let us know in the comments. I want to know what you guys think. And now that we've spent the first 20 minutes of this episode talking about Christian Horner and Red Bull,
Nico
Hulkenberg landing P3. I mean, yeah, we'll clap it up. We'll clap it up.
239, baby. 239. And I bet it was well worth it.
Dude, I mean,
didn't know what to do with his helmet afterwards.
Controversial trophy choice. How did you feel about the Lego trophy? Avid Lego enjoyer, Kevin Walker. I want to know your thoughts on
So it was just the Lego trophy?
It was just a Lego.
It should have been a real trophy and a Lego trophy.
I think I agree.
If you're gonna do that, you need to have both.
It feels strange that
it's like,
look, on top of the
it's
lore,
it's kind of like
on top of it being your first podium ever after 239 races. I had people in my personal circle were like, "You gave him a freaking Lego trophy."
It's kind of like I went to the British Grand Prix and all I got was a stupid Lego. Like that's the kind of vibes that you get from it.
Yeah, and I didn't even get the champagne sprayed on me because McLaren were more focused on spraying each other.
We'll talk about that a little bit. Well, because I mean,
this is the time to talk about it. Defend your boys.
Look, McLaren got roasted.
They should have.
They were like,
they should have.
McLaren's selfish, this, that, and the other. Like, look, I get it. I understand it from that perspective, but also Lando went in there and grabbed this helmet. They were having a conversation in the cool down room as well.
Sure.
Now, were they
that's
were
Nico's,
they Mercedes?
And Nico's first, possibly his only podium he's ever going to have in his career. And you don't that's his moment. I know Lando just won his home race.
Well, also
that's special.
The tension between Lando and Oscar was at an all-time high.
Which,
McLaren was, and that's what I'm saying. I don't want to make this a McLaren segment. All I'm saying is, look, I get it. I'm not saying that McLaren were the nice guys.
I'm saying you got to celebrate the man.
They weren't the nice guys of the weekend by any chance.
No, they were not.
But look, I would love, and I'm really expecting there to be questions as to Lando, to Oscar. Hey, why didn't y'all celebrate with him with champagne? I'm hoping that there's a reason. I don't want to think that Lando and Oscar, of all people, are just being assholes to be assholes.
I think honestly, like the simple, most straightforward answer is they just didn't think about it.
I don't think they did.
Look, I can get it, but it sucks. This is his moment. And as much as I know, again, Lando won and it's his home Grand Prix and he said he would have traded them all for this one. But Lando has the opportunity to win this race. Nico Hulkenberg being there is an anomaly. It's an anomaly. You got to celebrate him too. And that's all I'm saying.
I get it. Look, I'm not completely defending McLaren. All I'm saying is I'm hoping that
As
there
you
was a
should.
reason. I'm hoping that there's a reason behind why they did the way that they did. I mean, look, like I said, Lando grabbed this helmet going into the cool down room. It's not like they completely neglected him like he wasn't part of them. Like, I also think that there is a little bit of a disconnect between the age there. I think that's also another thing to be considered.
I don't know. Like Lewis could have been up there and they would have celebrated with him too.
I mean, I guess, but
or Fernando.
But let's not pretend that Lewis and Fernando are in the same necessary discussions as Nico Hulkenberg.
Fair, but I'm just saying it's a huge moment. Like,
it's a fantastic moment, and I was extremely happy for him, and I was excited for him, and I'm excited for Steak. They had a good weekend.
This is the hallmark moment for Steak F1. Like, this is the hang it on the fridge. You're always going to have that moment.
Yeah.
This is the biggest moment in Steak F1 as it exists, because they're going to be Audi next year. They've only been Steak F1 for like 2 years. Within your 2-year run, you got a podium. Like, that's just something incredible.
And they've had consistent like points. Like, they've done
and Nico,
pretty good.
And Nico Hulkenberg has been kicking ass. He's been kicking ass for the last couple of years. Even at his time in Haas, kicked a lot of ass last year too. Nico Hulkenberg is one of the more underrated drivers, especially in the midfield. I'm happy he got this moment. I think F1 fans across the globe were excited for him to land that podium. It's not like it came easy either. Like, the weekend was insane. It was weather all over the place. You went from torrential downpour to track drying to more rain to
bad strategy
calls from all up and down the grid. Your car's not even supposed to be sniffing a top 10, realistically speaking. Like, this is not the 10th fastest car. It's certainly not the 3rd fastest car. And to weather all of that, to fend off Lewis Hamilton, who was chasing, from P4 for a decent amount, both the Ferraris, a P19 to P3 or P20 to P3. I knew we started on the back row.
Nuts.
Insane. So yeah, look, I'm
all the right calls. If you didn't like Nico Hulkenberg grabbing P3, then I don't like you.
Say it to his face.
Simple enough.
Look, again, huge moment. And it shoots them up to P6 in the constructors, by the way. I wouldn't say right behind, but they're right behind Williams as far as the standings are considered.
I haven't been able to look at it. What's the points difference?
They're 18 points behind Williams in P5 and 5 points ahead of V-Carb and Aston Martin, tied for 6th.
Which might happen if Williams keeps crapping the bed like that.
I mean, yeah, we're going to talk about the midfield too. And fun fact that I saw scrolling around social media, but Hulkenberg has outscored Red Bull Racing by himself since the Spanish Grand Prix, 31 points to just 29. That just, ties the
which is pretty much like a max win and then some points here and there because Yuki ain't contributing to that.
Yuki's having a fun time.
He's just there. He's the reserve driver that's actually driving.
Look, let us know y'all's thoughts in the comments. Hulkenberg, celebrate him in the comments. Give him all the praise. The dude deserves it. It's honestly gonna be one of the best moments of this season, if we're being honest. Like,
a highlight for sure. This is going to be okay. What do we think the Drive to Survive title of this episode is going to be?
Oh man, so originally the podcast episode name was 239 races.
That's a good contention.
And like that would be a good episode name. Like the way that they talked about
Take notes, Netflix.
Look, because you'll feel a little bit for this. Last year they had an episode Lando No Wins. So they'll probably take the same structure and just go, but Nico Hulkenberg no podiums.
I don't like that. That doesn't roll.
No,
I like 239.
Well, about 239 races.
239 would be good. Or they could just do it Hulkenberg like we did.
Yeah.
Like a lot of views. Just Hulkenberg.
Inspired by Daniel Ricciardo.
I was going to say the first clip you see is Daniel Ricciardo.
I mean, another touching moment within this too, like Kevin Magnussen was there. If you remember the history between these two guys back when Hulkenberg was at Renault,
hated each other.
Not fans of each other.
No.
Hitting him with a suck my balls, mate. To going to Magnussen being in the garage.
Which... That's fantastic because it's not like we've seen that every weekend.
Yeah, and another thing too,
of all the races,
not to over insert everybody else into this picture, but other teams are excited for this too. Let's not forget Mercedes sent over champagne because it's not like Steak we're expecting.
They didn't have
this
one
to happen. You know what I mean? Nobody saw this coming. Crazy, but yeah, the camaraderie of the sport, everybody was super excited, and hats off to the team too because it's a team victory to get to this. Hulkenberg, huge accomplishment for him. But again, you got to think about Steak F1, Alfa Romeo, the guys who have been on that team for the last 5, 6, 7 years. They have not sniffed this opportunity. This is a huge moment for everybody on that team. So hats off. I'm going to little clap one more time as we transition to your boys.
Man, this is I want to open with your thoughts and what you would have done if you were FIA.
My thoughts specifically.
Your thoughts specifically.
Controversial win, I think is a fair way of putting it. On my own notes, I even had Oscar stolen win ? Do I think it was justified? I could see the rationale.
It being 10 seconds?
10 seconds? No.
Or do you think it being the penalty itself?
I think that the penalty was egregious in general. And I say that because I understand where Oscar is coming from, where the lights turned off and I'm supposed to back off. He backs off.
Mm-hmm.
Max overshoots. But you get another angle of this from a little bit further back, and everybody in the field's already kind of bunched up. Him stopping when he stops makes everybody else ahead stop. Could have potentially caused an incident with that over braking. And I think the FIA justification behind it in comparison to George Russell in Canada was he overbroke and could have caused an accident versus what Russell did in Canada. A little bit different. Overall, I think that I think 10 seconds was egregious. I think 10 seconds was a bit meddling because a 10-second gap is not going to happen between Lando and Oscar at that stage of the race.
Right.
Too messy of a weekend. Hell, you could have gotten a safety car at some point. It would have changed the complexion of everything again on a weekend that had so many swings and changes already. I think the FIA meddled with the result. I hate to say it because it's Lando's home win. That's supposed to be an incredibly special moment, but
we can talk about it as it is.
But it feels tainted.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Lando in this because you get a win. You always love having a win, but
he's had enough controversial wins that I'm sure he's fine with it at this point.
Well, like you could even argue Australia was a bit controversial.
Yeah.
We could argue again, Austria.
That's the only thing that I hate about this title is that it almost feels like, every time Lando wins, it's controversial.
Yeah. It kind of encapsulates the championship battle up to this point in the season too.
But
overall,
more or less.
Overall, look, if you're going to dole out a penalty, I say 5 seconds because then you have an actual battle happening there.
Yeah.
Like Oscar can maybe
widen
that out.
They've been able to eliminate
5 seconds.
They've been able to eliminate 5 seconds before.
Yeah. So I think it was a bit meddlesome. I think the FAA were way too heavy-handed on this, and unfortunately, it just sours the weekend for McLaren as a whole.
Now, here's what I will say, because I will start off with, I do agree. I think that it was too much. Now, taking time out of it, did he commit a penalty? Technically, yes. By the rules, yes, he committed a penalty. He broke over 100 miles an hour difference, and Max being right behind him makes it different than what had happened with George and Max, because they were alongside each other. Max being behind him, he had to swerve out to the side. Now, I've watched the video multiple times. I've went back and I've done some, a little bit of research. I've done some, I guess investigating, if you will. Max also went off to the side and he kind of exaggerated it a little bit. Like, Max probably was not going to hit Oscar. He just didn't want to smack his brakes as that hard to make him, I guess he didn't want to catch a flat spot. He didn't want to, damage his tires any more than they already were. So lockup was the word I was looking for. I couldn't think of the word. I was hoping you'd help me. Anyway, he didn't want to lock up. And so, but he wasn't even close to a lockup. He was able to slow down really, really easily. He didn't have to smash the brakes as hard as he sold it. So he pulled off to the side. Everybody else was fine. So again, technically, yes, it is a penalty. 10 seconds is too egregious. It's absolutely ridiculous. I actually agree with you. I think that 5 seconds would have been much, much better. And I watched Julian Palmer's breakdown of it on F1 TV. And he pretty much was saying that prior laps, Oscar had essentially braked the exact same time, the exact same dramatics, the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
And that the penalty, or not the penalty, but the safety car didn't really change too much, other than he broke a little bit harder, AKA he didn't brake as long. It was more of a sharper brake.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about it from that standpoint, it's not that much different than what he had done in the past. The FIA didn't hit up with the, hey, don't do that again, or hey, be careful with that. Like there's been past instances that the FIA hasn't said anything about.
Yeah.
So if you want,
it feels like it's meddling.
If you want to hand a penalty out, okay, like I guess technically I understand it, but 10 seconds is just like, what are we doing? Like, 5 seconds would have been an absolute max. And
yeah, like it cheapens. Unfortunately, it cheapens Lando's win. Like, I know you're a fan, like you're a big fan of Lando. Like that's your boy, but like I wouldn't want to win a race like that.
Well, unfortunately, I've gotten really used to it because every time that Lando wins, it's, well, Lando only won because Oscar did this or Oscar did that. But anytime Oscar wins, it's like, well, Oscar's just better. Oscar's just better than Lando.
He is. But
so
no, I mean, but
no, on a serious note, yes, it does. It does suck a little bit.
This championship, though, like the complexion of it, 8 points are still separating these two guys. They're clear in a way going to be fighting the rest of the way this season. I think maybe this is a moment between the two drivers where the divisiveness continues, right? The separation of the garage, so to speak. But
I mean, the garage is separated. We can tell that by how they're
racing each other,
how they're communicating with each other.
But what I want to get at is with this moment, with the intervention of it happening and the way that Oscar felt about it, do not be shocked if in Spa and in Azerbaijan, not Azerbaijan, Hungary, excuse me, he comes out pissed. He comes out.
Well,
pissed.
he was racing mad.
Yeah. So I'm saying like he's gonna walk out these next couple of weekends and go, I'm not gonna make it close. Like that level of like obviously the cars are the same, more or less. You know, built the same way, but I just think that the performance level for him is going to be, I'm turning it up another notch.
Yeah, and which good. Like
you want that.
Then if Lando can win, then that proves what it needs to prove.
Yeah, but I also think Hungary is going to be a fun, and we're going to talk about it. Hungary is going to be another whole conversation on its own because Oscar gets his first win there last year after Lando backs off of it, right? Yeah. That being an entire conversation that we had on the first season.
Lando wish he didn't do that.
But like,
screw you. You could have got your own win.
But now Oscar's going to walk into Hungary and go,
True.
I'm going to earn that win that I got given last year. Yeah. Like it's going to be mine. So who comes out on top? I want to know what you guys think. TLPs, let us know down in the comments below.
5 seconds, 10 seconds.
How do you feel about the penalty? Like, you know, give us your thoughts, honestly. Other teams on the grid, you had a nice high point. I had an absolute low point again.
Not necessarily all too much of a high. Everybody was too busy discounting Lando's win, but continue on.
I mean, look, a 1-2 is still nice. I'll take that 1-2 over what Mercedes did this weekend because
P10 for your boy.
P10, you know, points.
Only if you would have predicted it.
I know, right? That would have been fantastic.
I had a better weekend.
You did. Look, the Grand Prix Sunday was a massive disaster. Mercedes decided to gamble and put George on dries after the first lap, basically. Which
George called for that gamble, though.
Yeah, he called for it, but the decision still came down to the team too, and they decided to take that gamble. They also did the same thing with Kimi, and yellow flag after yellow flag after yellow flag neutralized any bit of that gamble in the slightest, and then just put you out on the wrong tire compound. It just did. The fact that George even got back to P10 is kind of surprising. Kimi, another DNF, that wasn't his fault because Isaac Hadjar couldn't see anything, which, to be fair, none of us could see anything with those onboard cameras. I don't blame Isaac Hadjar. I feel bad that his race also ended in that moment. But yeah, Kimi Antonelli's race effectively ending there too, destroying the rear diffuser, lost 40% of downforce, if I'm not mistaken. It was the slowest car on track at that point. Had to retire the car. So yeah, very forgettable. I wish it didn't happen. And I thought that he was going to win. Like I thought that was a good opportunity for Russell to go, oh, I converted pole last year, almost had a shot at it and didn't win. I'm going to do it this year. That was my rationale, and it didn't happen. So it was a rough weekend.
Without rain, do you think that comes true?
Without rain?
I don't know if Mercedes looked like that all weekend.
I don't know if they looked like that all weekend either. My ambition on Wednesday was not met on track, unfortunately. Yeah. I think McLaren were probably going to win based on the performances prior. I mean, George had a good first practice. That was cool. And
Max looked good.
Max
looked like it was going to be
Max looked fantastic.
It looked like it was going to be another Max McLaren weekend.
Well, like if the conditions don't go the way they go, I think that obviously we have a lot less DNFs. But yeah, Max is probably fighting for that win. Like he's up there. He's fighting competitively. George even bringing it that close to the McLarens, I was surprised by to get a P4 to start on the grid. there are some small little victories there, but at the end of the day, they want points. Now they're sitting in P3 because, again, another DNF and only a 1-point result. They're 12 points behind Ferrari at this point when they should not be this far behind them. It's a disaster weekend. It sucks. They won in Belgium last year, even with Russell's DNF. Antonelli's going to be in a familiar circuit. We're going to talk about we're going to preview the Belgian Grand Prix this time next week, or you will be anyway. I might not be able to make it. The result could be a little bit different. I have to hope that Spa is going to be a better weekend. I don't know if it really gets too much worse. We've seen some frustrating weekends from Mercedes, though, ever since basically Imola. Besides Canada, everything else has been kind of a mess.
Yeah.
So hopefully they get out of this funk, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Mercedes are, maybe biting off a little more than they can chew at this point? Do you think that this is going to be a consistent issue for them? Let us know in the comments. I want to take a look at the midfield, though.
Midfield had a weekend.
It was another interesting weekend. The midfield's been showing up this year.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're paying attention outside of just the front of the field with you guys dominating everything, like the midfield has been really exciting.
You have to think about it. Like last year, was it Stake that finished with no points?
They finished like 6.
Okay.
They barely finished with points.
So I'm trying to remember. I could have sworn there was a team that finished with absolutely no points.
No, it was Stake for a long time, but then they grabbed a couple points towards the end.
Okay, so but even at this rate, like all the midfield and even the bottom teams, like everybody's getting points this year. It's keeping things interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, Alpine this race, Pierre Gasly snagged a P6 finish, which was fantastic points for them, even though they are sitting in P10 at the moment. Gasly showed mental toughness. He looked really good. He fended off Lewis Hamilton for a lot longer than he probably should have been able to, if we're being completely honest. He fought off George Russell for a while when George was sniffing those points. I mean, look, he made Lewis Hamilton's day pretty rough for a while there, and Pierre Gasly gets a little bit of a tip of the hat, little nod. He had a hell of a performance. Colapinto, unfortunately, though, started the car, drove out a little bit, and then realized this thing isn't going to go very far.
Have you seen the rumor that Duhan's going to replace him again?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Franco's, I'm just going to say it sucked.
They both haven't been great,
but Franco's crashed the car, I think, every weekend.
That's why Alpine have been looking into Valtteri Bottas's availability, because at this point they're like, dude, this guy absolutely is not going to be.
Which is so strange because Franco was red hot whenever he got his shot.
Yeah,
originally, and
that's
why
to rhyme on purpose.
Huh?
Do you mean to rhyme on purpose there?
No, I did not. But he did, because I remember we were like, "No, Franco Colapinto deserves
he
a
looks
seat.
good.
Franco Colapinto deserves a seat." But
again, he also had crashes last year, which I brought up in the conversations around Duhan. I was like, "Look, it's not like Franco is faultless," which I didn't mean to slant rhyme there either, but. He's not faultless. He wasn't faultless when they decided to sign him. And I don't blame Franco for trying to get that opportunity. He saw the most available seat on the grid and chased it. He looked really good at points last year. Williams looked pretty okay at certain points with him in the car last year. He did a much better job than Logan Sargent, which apparently isn't saying much.
Our American hero.
Our true American hero. But yeah.
He enjoyed 4th of July.
Franco Colapinto, another damage weekend, crashed the car in qualifying. It sucks. Aston Martin, though, a double points finish. Lance Stroll.
And the worst car on the grid with the unluckiest driver.
Yeah. Golf clap for Lance Stroll. We recognize when
Soon
Lance
to be
Stroll
replaced
gets
by
points.
Max Verstappen.
He had a really good day to grab P7. 6 more points to Aston Martin's effort. P3 for a good chunk of the race, by the way. He was up there on the podium places for a hot minute until things just kind of slipped away. But he looked pretty good. I'm going to give him some credit. Fernando Alonso, he wasn't necessarily happy to finish P9. I think he believed that they could have done more this weekend.
Not bad for a rookie.
But neither of those guys like the car, which is hilarious. Because Lance Stroll finished in P7. I think I heard an onboard of him basically saying, like, this car was a nightmare to drive.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we even got into the points, something along those lines.
It's really uplifting words.
But a solid home Grand Prix, a very solid home Grand Prix for the Silverstone-based unit. Aston Martin, they're still tied in 7th place with VCarb at 36 points apiece. Williams, Alex Albon finished a race. Three race weekends in a row. Alex Albon finally did it.
No DNFs or DNSs.
Yeah. So,
which, you know what? I'll take it.
A P8 finish, 4 much-needed points for them to stave off the up-and-comers. Carlos Sainz finished P12. No points, but,
I'll take a note. I'll honestly, with how wacky the British Grand Prix was, I will take it as long as there was no DNFs.
Dude, honestly, finishing this race was you get credit for it. Williams are still in P5 at 59 points. Another team that also had both their drivers finish this race, not without a couple of incidents.
Haas, yeah, that's true. They looked
P11 for Behrman, P13 for Ocon. They had a little tap dance routine coming out of turn 6 at that one time. But besides that, I wouldn't say a faultless weekend because they also ended Liam Lawson's race by accident, or at least Esteban Ocon was a part of that racing incident. Which, speaking of which, VCARB, a double DNF weekend. I mentioned earlier, Isaac Hadjar crashed into the back.
Rare from Hadjar, but it was just
look,
he wasn't able to time it up correctly.
You get a bit of an excuse though when the rain is that bad,
and you're a rookie.
You couldn't we saw
he literally could not see, dude. It was insane.
We couldn't see from the viewing perspective. There's no way. So I give him a bit of a pass on that. Like I couldn't even see Kimi Antonelli's brake lights in that. So I get it. Liam Lawson got caught out in an incident early. They're sitting at 29 points. Excuse me. So yeah, VCARB, they're not in a terrible spot, just a rough weekend. So
tough one. They'll be able to bounce back though. I expect that. And I expect that. I would expect that.
Lauren
bounce back, especially for Hadjar.
Yeah. Well, Lauren Mekes has left behind a really good unit. Like that's a good racing team. And again, Alan Permain, he's going to be able to pick up those pieces. Probably going to be a couple little changes. Everybody likes to lead a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, he's inheriting a pretty good squad to finish out these races.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So let's rate this race. I'll let you go first.
Let's keep it short. We've already broke down everything that happened between the DNFs, the rain, the win, the controversy. But this one's going to really rank high for me. I'm going to say the British Grand Prix is an 8.8.
Okay. You and I are exactly the same in that.
Really?
I had an 8.8 out of 10. Look, a change in the front. Look, something I'd been complaining about for weeks when it came to wins is like, all right, it was a fun race, but nothing changed at the front. I can't complain about that. There was a change at the front this race. Unfortunately, it just wasn't on track.
True.
That's the unfortunate aspect of this. If Lando takes the lead in this race and wins his home Grand Prix
on
merit, this is like that's a 9 minimum, right? Like that's a fantastic race. Nico Hulkenberg is carrying a lot here, getting that P3. A messy, chaotic day. Up and down the order.
Fun.
It was a fun race.
You never knew what was going to happen. Edge of your seat.
Look, I pulled up the race on Sunday, saw that it was like rain in the forecast. The track was already wet. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. And it just kept going on and off all day.
Yeah.
Look, I think I liked Australia a little bit more. I think that race was a lot of fun as well. We had a very similar amount of DNFs.
Yeah.
We had incidents there. It was the opening Grand Prix of the season. And Lando Norris won that race too. And look, like Oscar Piastri had his spin, but kept it on track just to get points. Like crazy weekend in Australia. I think I like it just a bit more because the result wasn't as controversial.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm going to go same score though. 8.8 out of 10. This is a fun race. You know what? Another
see eye to eye on much.
Look, here's the other fun fact. If you went and watched the F1 movie and then this was your first race,
I've seen so many.
You know what I mean? Like this is going to be
what the hell is a qualifying?
Well, first off that, but you got to watch, like, it was basically like watching a damn movie. Like the guy who wasn't supposed to be there gets on the podium, gets his trophy for the first time.
Sonny Hayes, is that you?
So it's Sonny Hayes, IRL. So it was a lot of fun. Let's hit these comments though. Let's move on. See what the people are saying.
All right.
I'll change the. You got it.
So here's we're gonna start with this one. We have neglected y'all in the comment section for a little bit, so we're gonna go back.
We didn't get as many comments last video.
Yeah. So
plus we had a monster.
So we're gonna go back. We're going back to 5 days prior. This one was on the short that we posted, talking about the potential of what if Mercedes brought in Max alongside George. First off, let me preface that was just me being a journalist playing devil's advocate. I ask all the questions that come to my head, whether if I think they're dumb or smart.
Yeah.
That was hey, obviously they're not going to do that, but it's a fun conversation piece. And y'all got quite pissed about it.
Yeah, this is on our TikTok, correct?
So yeah, this one's from the TikTok.
Follow us at the Lap Pod.
These are all 3 comments that we got on the TikTok. So from Alex Tyler. Look at the gap between Piastri and Norris in 23 versus the gap now. Kimi has done great so far and will continue to develop with time. Completely agree. Could not agree more.
Yeah, I said the same thing further on in that segment myself, actually.
John Musically 106. Funny you think they're going to sack Kimi after Mercedes put so much effort into his development.
I also didn't think that was going to happen either.
Did not think that was going to happen. We understand. And Kai Shugao.
Yeah, Kai Shugao 2000.
Kimi is not the one leaving. Agree.
Again, agree. So, look,
just play devil's advocate here, people.
Well, look, it's a fair question to ask, Justin, because we are walking through every possibility. What if they did Max George? What if they did Max Kimi? What if, the world was upside down? Like we were kind of walking through every different possibility.
Supposed to do as journalists. Okay, now we got a lot to get to.
Small J journalists.
This one is on the YouTube at Modnar38. Max and George is just Nico and Hamilton. Not a great idea. Now, you said you wanted to speak on this one.
I do, because the era for Lewis and Nico, that final 2016 season, pretty toxic. But up until that point, like, more or less, like the Brosades era was a real thing. Like they grew up together in karting. Nico Rosberg had this nice rise coming from Williams over to Mercedes. He paired up with Schumacher. He was there from the get-go. They had a good relationship. Yeah, 2016 changed everything. I don't think they have as strong of a relationship now. The rivalry was there. The difference being the friendship level. I think Max and George are professionals. They could shake hands on the grid and say, you had a good job. Okay, spray champagne, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They're coworkers. But like, I don't see these guys as like having a tight relationship that falls apart. We're already at a very low bar when it comes to their relationship. So putting them together, I don't quite see it. The level of damage caused here, pretty comparable. I can see that 100%. I kind of see what you're saying. I disagree a little bit.
Okay. All right. Then this one's the last one. These are the comments that we got on the Instagram, I do believe.
Bennett Brown 1237.
Bennett Brown was not happy with our take. I take Max and Kimi and Mercedes all day. See you later, George. And the Kimi disrespect is crazy.
I think that was kind of targeted at you.
Okay. So first off, if you think that we're disrespecting Kimi Antonelli, you're not a real TLP, because all year last year, this man right here next to me waxed poetic about this young Italian boy.
I've been saying he was
Kimi
the truth.
Antonelli since the dawn of our podcast.
He's my Italian son. I'm just so excited.
It's not that we had disrespect for Kimi. If anything, we have given Kimi a longer leash than most rookies this year, just based on the fact, hey, you're driving a high caliber supercar in the Mercedes. You're driving a contender car in Mercedes. And we know that you're going to learn, and you're literally freaking 18 years old.
Yeah.
Just finished high school. So we're giving him all the leash in the world. We would also love to see Max and Kimi versus George and Max, though it would be very fun to talk about how much George and Max bicker. But
no matter which direction we're going, it's going to be cinema. It's going to be fun.
No matter what,
it's
Kimi Antonelli is going to have a seat in Formula One. Don't get that mistaken whatsoever. And we are Kimi Antonelli stans.
And
okay.
I'm the leader of the fan club. So,
all right. So that's enough of people thinking that we hate
Kimi Antonelli. It could be further from the truth.
All right. So this one is from In Is a Person. This one was actually from today. Max Verstappen wouldn't work in the Mercedes ecosystem, no matter the scenario. It's that simple.
Respectfully, I disagree with this comment, because in case you aren't familiar with or you don't remember, Max was brought up in the Mercedes ecosystem. The reason he went to Red Bull is that Nico Rosberg existed, basically. Toto Wolff could not offer Max Verstappen the seat because Nico Rosberg occupied that seat, and you obviously got to see Nico Rosberg go on to win a championship. He had 2 championship level caliber drivers at the time. There was just nowhere to go. They were willing to support him through lower formulas until that seat became available. But Max obviously got an offer from Red Bull that he couldn't refuse to go from Formula 3 Europe straight to F1. You're not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Mercedes, he could absolutely work in that ecosystem. The concern for me, as well as I'm sure a lot of people, probably this person too, if I'm being honest, is that the way that he drives would tailor the car. They're worried that it would happen again at what's happened at Red Bull basically would happen at Mercedes. I think overall the infrastructure is better at Mercedes. The facilities are better at Mercedes. The leadership structure is better at Mercedes. I just think the ecosystem would work better for him.
Okay. Now we'll go to this one, and then we'll go to a longer one. We've got 2 more.
Okay.
This one is calling us out in as a Formula One ball knowers. This is from @the_J_Ray, and this is on YouTube, I do believe.
Yep.
It's called Race Management. Oscar is pushing, Lando is pushing, Lando is managing. You don't seem to know much about F1. We get this a lot because we're Americans, first off.
Yeah. There's a bit of elitism. Look, the reality is if Lando wanted to exert more out of his tires, maybe he should have done it, but he didn't. And based off of what we saw, Oscar was catching him. Yes. I mentioned this a couple weeks prior in a reference to the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Now, keep in mind, this is 5 days ago. So this is referring to
the Austrian Grand Prix. So yes, the concept of race management and tire management is not lost on either of us. No. We saw George Russell do it in Las Vegas.
We did a whole
when
breakdown
Lewis Hamilton
on it.
was catching up with them. We've broken it down in a number of different episodes. Look, yes. Could Lando Norris have possibly been saving his tires? Yeah, it's possible. I'm not going to pretend like it's not a far-fetched possibility in the slightest. But Oscar was working the hell out of that car and bringing it really close. If I just see based on history, what Mercedes did. George Russell, Lewis Hamilton's catching up to me. He's within 5 seconds. Then he started working out of his tires in Las Vegas, and the gap stayed the same. Lando didn't do that, and Oscar was right behind him at killing a gap that was starting at 6.5 seconds, 7 seconds, all the way down to 1.4. He was just working through traffic. If Lando wanted to use more of his tires, maybe he should have, but he didn't. So I don't know. That's kind of my take on this. My response to this, if you will. I don't know. That's kind of it. At the end of the day, yes, race management's a thing and tire management's a thing, but Lando didn't do it. So,
and honestly, McLaren have been one of the best, if not the best, on the grid at race management
and tire management. Yeah.
So this is not really something that is of concern. I think it's just that Oscar was driving the hell out of the car and Lando was doing his best to try to keep pace.
Yeah. So, and if we don't know much about F1, watch more of our content and tell us what else we don't know. Maybe you should subscribe.
Yeah. Possibility.
But just keep it simple.
All right. So this is on TikTok. This one we got earlier today. This is from, we're not going to go into it, just a user. Technically, this is referring to the British Grand Prix. Technically, he didn't win the race. He was given it by the stewards that are more than likely were all British people. I bet there was one Australian on the committee, and he only did what Max has done for many of years.
I mean, do you want to go on this one?
I don't want to believe that there was bias in this because he was, because he's British, he's at the British Grand Prix. Like, I would love to think that the FIA is not corrupted in that manner, because if that's the case, then we're all screwed anyway, because half the grid is British anyway. And then you've got all these different nationalities from all these different drivers. If we don't have representatives for each nationality, each region in the FIA, then what the hell are we doing? Like, no, I don't believe that this is part of it whatsoever. I would rather think that this was just an overcall by the FIA, which we've seen before. Let's not act like this is the first time we've seen the FIA make a decision we don't love.
I think that maybe the nationality side of things is a little bit, I think the skew of this comment's a bit off because of the nationality part of it, but I don't know that I completely disagree with this comment, actually.
Okay.
Because earlier I mentioned that I think they meddled, and I think that the meddling of this race, it had an impact on the race.
Giving a British
over penalizing Oscar Piastri to effectively hand the win to Oscar or to Lando. Look, he won the damn race. I mean, like, we can if you want to be technically Lando crossed the line first. So, like, in defense of what actually happened on track, Lando won the damn race. Have there been calls by stewards in the past that have absolutely like changed the complexion of things though? Absolutely though. And unfortunately, it's just a part of the sport. Like, corruption,
you're not going to get
corruption right. Or otherwise, like the entire sport is littered with calls that go in one team's favor or one driver's favor and not another's. As most recently as Abu Dhabi 2021, right? The call to, we're going to have one lap of racing and Max Verstappen getting effectively handed the championship because he had soft tires versus Lewis's old hard tires. Like, steward intervention is kind of a part of the game at a certain level. I hate to say it, you kind of have to be better in a way to kind of overcome some of these things too. I don't agree with it, but it's not that. It's all I'm saying is that in the history of Formula One, steward decisions have characterized things in the past. Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a pretty fun show. Another hour-long podcast, nearly. We just
can't help ourselves.
We just love talking to you guys. We have a lot to talk about this week. Again, well, we love talking to you guys.
But before we get out of here, if you're still watching and you made it all the way through this point, first off, thank you. I'm going to assume you're one of our 71 loyal subscribers. So if you want to become 72, go ahead and write down below, leave a comment on any of the things we talked about.
Subscribe. Become the 72nd TLP, maybe 73rd. We're trying to hit 100. Look, that's
by
the
the
goal.
end of the year, we're trying to hit 100. Trying to hit a hundo. We can put some money into this thing, upgrade it, get it better. But tell your friends, tell your girlfriend, tell your boyfriends, tell your grandma, tell your aunt.
Yeah.
Tell your local restaurant. If you're a brand,
look,
give us
tell
money.
everybody. Tell everybody. We want to be put in front of more Formula One fans like yourselves. Obviously, this sport is growing massively. We want to be a part of that growth. We want to be a part of your Formula One experience. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so down below. We appreciate you listening all the way to the end of this video. With that being said, until next time, be safe, be well, and let's go racing.